Right now in Ukraine, crossing an open field is practically a death sentence. While you and everyone else are busy talking about Abrams tanks and FPV drones, the absolute worst job on the battlefield is just surviving the ride to the zero line. To do that, you need a battle taxi that won't turn into a steel coffin the second it gets spotted. We analyzed the data, the destruction rates, and the combat footage to rank 10 armored personnel carriers fighting in Ukraine. Number 1 may come to you as a surprise. Number 10, we have Ukraine's BTR-3 and BTR-4. This hurts a little differently than the others because these are Ukraine's own vehicles. Built in Kharkiv, fielded by Ukrainian crews, and still somehow racking up some of the worst confirmed loss numbers of any APC in this war. That is a rough place to start a countdown. BTR-3 and 4 were supposed to be Ukraine's upgrade path away from Soviet hand-me-downs. Proper wheeled APCs built domestically, better ergonomics, real crew comfort compared to anything that rolled out of the Soviet era, reasonable firepower to support infantry and assault tasks. Then February 2022 arrived, and none of that mattered as much as people hoped it would. The numbers are what put them at the bottom of this ranking. Oryx, the open source tracker that only logs what has been photographed or filmed, had already confirmed 13 BTR-4s and 5 BTR-3s destroyed in the opening phase of the invasion alone. By February 2026, Ukraine had lost 5,596 armored APCs we can verify, and those are only the counted ones. Vehicles hit by long-range artillery deep behind lines, dragged off in the dark, scrapped somewhere nobody filmed. None of that makes the Oryx list. The real attrition was higher than any official figure suggests. Russia grabbed a portion of them too. Chronically short on anything capable of moving troops under fire, Russian forces picked up abandoned BTR-3s and BTR-4s wherever they found them. Many were mobility killed and was simply left behind. Ukrainian crews under ferocious fire sometimes had no real option. You leave the vehicle or you die in it. Russia benefited either way. That is a specific kind of humiliation for a domestically built defense product. When Western APCs started arriving from donor nations, the BTRs did not retire. They were reshuffled into mixed formations. They stayed on the front. Commanders preferred the BTR-4 over older Soviet BTR-80s for urban and semi-urban assaults. The handling was sharper, the firepower was meaningfully better. That preference was tactically sound. It also meant deeper exposure, more time in kill zones, and steeper losses accumulated over time. The footage from the field tells the same story repeatedly. These vehicles burn on roads. They get caught in open tree lines. They are found by FPV drones or artillery before anyone has a chance to react. The main killers are not tanks. They are not AT gunners with clear sight lines. They are cheap drones launched from a kilometer away. They are shells with no audible warning. By late 2025, BTR-3s and BTR-4s were still out there. They were repaired and returned. Ukrainian industry knows the platform cold and spare parts exist. That resilience counts for something, but it does not change the ranking. High attrition, limited protection against the dominant threats of this war, and the uncomfortable reality of dying in a vehicle your own country built. Number 9. BTR-80 and BTR-82 from Russia. The gap between 9 and 10 is not as wide as it might look. The BTR-80 and BTR-82 rank above the Ukrainian BTR family, mostly on scale of contribution, but the loss record is catastrophic in ways that dwarf almost everything else on this entire list. Russia has lost somewhere around 9,200 infantry carriers across 47 months of fighting. A massive portion of that wreckage is BTR-80s and BTR-82s, and the reason is not complicated. Russia fed them in by the thousands, and thousands of them never came back. Moscow's answer to mounting losses was not a tactical rethink. It was faster production and faster shipment to the front. One analyst described Russian BTR-82 output during this period as back to Soviet level. More vehicles going forward meant more vehicles dying forward, and Russia never stopped sending replacements to fill those feeds again. That cycle ran for nearly 4 years with no sign of changing. Ukraine captured around 58 BTR-80s and 13 full BTR-82As from Russian forces. Ukraine turned portions of those captured hulls into Ukrainian service vehicles. Those numbers are an indictment of how Russia was employing these carriers. Poorly supported frontal assaults, vehicles pushed ahead without adequate reconnaissance. Crews encountering threats nobody had warned them about. When your enemy regularly captures your APCs and turns them around against you, the tactical picture is not going well. When they do it 192 times, it is a systemic failure. The kill pattern became almost mechanical to document. A drone or artillery round hits the vehicle. It kills the drive or blows a wheel. The vehicle stops moving. A second drone or more artillery follows. The crew escapes if they are fortunate. The hull sits there until somebody recovers it or Russia eventually tries to retrieve it. The cage armor welded on in the field helped against some older FPV threats, but changed nothing meaningful about survivability against the munitions that actually defined this war. What analysts consistently pointed out was that BTR-82s showed no measurable survival advantage over older BMP variants in comparable conditions. The platform was not failing because of a specific design flaw unique to the BTR family. Russia kept sending them into sectors where no APC without proper combined arms support was going to last long. The BTR-82 absorbed the consequences of that doctrine year after year. Number 9, just above the bottom of this ranking, but only barely. 8 on the list, the FV-103 Spartan from the United Kingdom. The Spartan earns this position by being genuinely useful at something specific rather than attempting everything and failing at most of it. In a ranking where the 2 slots below it are defined by mass attrition and vehicles sent into roles they were never designed for, that distinction matters more than it might seem. The Spartan was never pitched as a frontline assault carrier, and nobody in Ukraine tried to use it as one. The British Army built it for reconnaissance, command work, specialist insertions, and moving small teams quietly in a tracked vehicle with enough protection to stop heavy machine gun fire. That focused design is precisely what kept it out of the bottom of this ranking. These vehicles came to Ukraine through crowdfunding and personal donations more than formal government military aid. Pritola Foundation raised about $5.5 million in November 2022, specifically to purchase 60 ex-British Spartans for Ukrainian forces. Former President Petro Poroshenko funded another batch personally. Latvia transferred vehicles from its own CVRT fleet. By early 2023, Ukraine had a distributed collection of these compact track carriers across units that understood how to use a light specialist platform properly. By January 2025, confirmed losses stood at 17 destroyed, 4 damaged, and 2 captured for 23 vehicles with Oryx verified evidence. The first documented loss near Bakhmut in April 2023 showed a Spartan burning after what analysts assessed as an artillery or airstrike. 23 confirmed losses for a charity-funded fleet is a noticeable rate, but nowhere near the carnage filling the 2 spots below it on this list. Besides, it was not built around modern ATGMs, large artillery fragments, or an FPV drone with a shaped charge. Ukrainian units that received Spartans largely understood that boundary and operated within it. Reconnaissance, small assault team movements, medical evacuation, tasks where a compact track profile worked as an advantage. Forest belts and narrow rural roads where larger platforms get stuck and bogged down. The problem is those terrain types are exactly where FPV operators position themselves and wait. Small and agile helps right up until the drone gets a lock. Light armor in a drone-heavy war has real limits regardless of how carefully you manage tactics, which is why 8th place is where the Spartan belongs. Number 7, Bushmaster from Australia. The Bushmaster nearly pushed into the top half of this list. The reason it sits at 7 comes down to loss numbers that are hard to overlook even with all the surrounding context. 47 destroyed, 5 damaged, 3 captured, 55 total out of 120 donated. Nearly half the delivered fleet confirmed gone. That figure puts a ceiling on how high this vehicle can climb, regardless of how well it performed in the individual moments that mattered most to the crews inside. Zelensky asked for Bushmasters by name in a speech to the Australian Parliament in April 2022, and Australia moved quickly. Around 120 across several donation rounds through 2022 and 2023, troop carrier and ambulance and command variants, all going primarily to airborne and assault units. The reputation that preceded them was genuine, a V-shaped hull designed from first principles to redirect blast energy away from the crew. Developed from hard lessons in deployments where soldier survival was treated as the primary engineering objective, not an afterthought, Ukrainian paratroopers matched what the engineers had built. An Australian senator who visited troops in 2022 came back with a specific account. 3 Bushmasters hit across separate incidents, RPGs and tank fire and mines among the causes. Every soldier inside every one of those vehicles survived. Russia put a cap captured Bushmaster on display at Patriot Park outside Moscow and used it as evidence that Western technology under-delivered. That framing required deliberately ignoring what the Bushmaster was actually designed to deliver and whether the soldiers who rode it were alive to talk about it. The missions Bushmasters draw are not gentle ones. Leading assaults, supporting airborne operations, pulling wounded from positions still under active fire. Ukrainian commanders assign their most trusted platforms to the hardest tasks, not the easiest ones. A vehicle doing those jobs in that environment will accumulate losses over time. The meaningful question is not whether the hull survived the hit, it is whether the crew inside survived the hull not surviving. Multiple documented cases answered that question specifically in the Bushmaster's favor, and Ukrainian operators have consistently credited the vehicle rather than luck for those outcomes. Number 6. V.A.B. from France. The structural resilience, disciplined employment, and a loss rate that stayed proportional to its actual role throughout a war it had no particular business lasting this long in. At least 250 delivered to Ukraine by early 2024, with 89 confirmed losses and 66 of those destroyed. For a vehicle that entered French service in the 1970s and has since appeared in Lebanon, Chad, Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Mali before landing in a full-scale European land war. The V.A.B. occupies a specific lane in Ukraine's APC inventory and never tried to pretend otherwise. It is not an assault vehicle and Ukrainian units never attempted to use it as one. Mechanized transport, rear area troop movement, logistics runs in sectors where artillery is a constant threat but dense mine belts are not the immediate problem. That employment decision is the V.A.B.'s consistent advantage in this ranking. You stay higher on the list when you are not being asked to do things specifically designed to destroy you. The most referenced incident in the V.A.B.'s Ukrainian record is not a loss, it is survival. A Russian guided aerial bomb struck a staging area where multiple V.A.B.s were parked together. The damage to the armored hulls was genuine and visibly significant in post-strike footage that circulated widely. What followed is what made the episode worth repeating. The damaged V.A.B.s drove out of the strike zone under their own power before being loaded onto transporters for later repair. After a direct guided bomb hit, they moved themselves. That episode became the unofficial demonstration of what the V.A.B.'s structural design actually does in the real world rather than on a paper. The hull absorbs significant blast energy without collapsing entirely, giving crews a survivable window that lighter or unarmored platforms simply cannot provide. Documented more than once in the Ukrainian theater, which suggests the result reflects genuine engineering rather than a single fortunate event. Number 5. YPR 765 from the Netherlands. This is the hardest vehicle on this entire list to place fairly. The confirmed loss count is brutal and worth stating plainly. 89 destroyed, 9 damaged, 16 abandoned, 8 captured, 122 total confirmed gone by June 2025. One of the highest absolute loss tallies of any Western donated APC family in this war. And yet number 5 is where it belongs, because the contribution behind those losses is proportionately enormous and sustained throughout the most demanding periods of the conflict. The Dutch started with 196 vehicles donated, kept going to 353 pledged and delivered by September 2024, then sent another 25 armored medevac variants in 2025. Even as the losses were mounting and the confirmed wreck count kept climbing, you do not keep shipping more of something that is not delivering value. That sustained commitment through documented and visible attrition is itself evidence of the operational returns Ukraine is extracting from these vehicles on the ground. Russia captured at least 5 functioning YPRs and tried to put them into Russian service. One of those captured was being operated by Russian troops in Donetsk Oblast, subsequently destroyed by a Ukrainian drone strike that deleted at least 2 of the Russians' occupants. The high loss count carries context that changes what it means when you hear it. EPRs arrived early in the war, when OSINT documentation was most thorough and every Western APC kill generated detailed analysis across multiple communities. They were distributed across virtually every Ukrainian formation needing tracked protected mobility. Infantry lift, fire support, command work, medevac runs, defensive positions under sustained artillery pressure for months at a time. Platforms present everywhere in a conflict like this accumulate losses everywhere. That is not a vehicle failure. That is the cost of being the backbone when nothing else was available in sufficient numbers. Number 4. M113 from the USA and other donors. This is sitting here rather than lower is a statement about what scale of contribution actually means in a war that consumed armored vehicles faster than anyone anticipated. Over 400 confirmed destroyed or captured by mid-2025 out of more than 1,900 delivered across multiple donor nations. Those numbers are staggering by any reasonable measure, and nobody is pretending otherwise. Italy announced 400 of them in a single aid package in May 2025. The United States sent large batches throughout the war of at least 200 pieces. Multiple European allies added to the running total. Australia included 14 alongside its Bushmaster donations. Every nation with old M113s gathering dust in storage saw Ukraine as a chance to clear shelf space while contributing something that could still move infantry under fire. Keep in mind, the first M113 saw combat in Vietnam. It was already a generation old when these deliveries began, which tells you something about the threshold of desperation that made it relevant again in 2022. Russia's TASS news agency mentions M113 kills with the energy of someone reading a weather report. But here is the problem. The aluminum hull that made the vehicle light enough to airlift anywhere in 1960 becomes a fire risk in 2026 when modern munitions connect with it. Aluminum burns differently than steel, and the results in post-strike footage are not subtle. The cage armor welded on by Ukrainian crews helped against some FPV threats and did nothing meaningful about what a heavy ATGM does to the hull on impact. That vulnerability is well understood by everyone operating these vehicles and accepted as a known cost. What keeps the vehicle at number 4 is operational volume and versatility during the periods when Ukrainian forces had the fewest real alternatives. Troop transport, command posts, mortar carriers, medevac platforms, and forward logistics runs into positions still being shelled. The abundance of hulls allowed commanders to absorb vehicle losses as an acceptable price for maintaining infantry survival and operational tempo across multiple simultaneous fronts. Old, vulnerable, increasingly expendable, and exactly what the situation demanded in the moments it mattered most. Third place goes to Stryker from the United States. The vehicle belongs here because of a performance record that was genuinely good when conditions suited it and clearly limited when they did not. That honest split is what separates the top 3 from everything ranked below, and the vehicle occupies the entry point of that distinction rather than the top of it. Somewhere between 1 and 300 were delivered by late 2024, with plans for around 500 total disrupted when US military aid froze following the 2024 election and administration change. The vehicles that arrived went to elite formations immediately, the Air Assault Brigade among them for infantry transport, engineering support, and command roles in the most demanding operations Ukraine was running at that stage of the war. Russia claimed its first confirmed Stryker kills near Kharkiv in October 2024, releasing footage of a loitering munition strike and asserting 4 knocked out in that sector. During the Kursk incursion in August 2024, when Ukraine pushed forces directly into Russian territory, Ukrainian armored vehicle loss rates ran at roughly double the Russian defending rate, and at least one vehicle was visually confirmed captured during that operation. The survivability stories from the same period are equally documented and worth acknowledging. A Stryker in Kursk took a direct RPG hit, stayed intact enough to protect the crew, who walked out with minor injuries while parts were salvaged and the hull went for repair. Crew protection functioning exactly as designed under actual combat conditions is part of why this vehicle lands in the top 3 and not lower. The limitations are documented with equal clarity. Rasputitsa, the seasonal mud that transforms Eastern European ground into a trap twice a year, punishes wheeled vehicles without any favoritism for how modern the engineering is. Strykers got stuck in conditions where tracked platforms kept moving, and a stationary vehicle in drone-covered airspace had a known and unpleasant outcome. Underbody protection against modern mines showed gaps even with double V hull upgrades applied. Heavy ATGMs like Cornet punched through the passive armor in multiple documented engagements. Cold weather degraded batteries, seals, and mechanical reliability in ways that post-deployment assessments described without attempting flattery. Number 2 is L.A.V 6.0 from Canada. This APC earns it through modern design, deliberate employment strategy, and a loss record so small it barely registers in any tracking database. Canada committed to 50 armored combat support vehicles, configured the first 10 specifically as armored ambulances. trained Ukrainian crews in Germany during 2024 and delivered the initial batch by October of that year alongside German Marder IFVs. The decision to send medevac-configured variants rather than general assault carriers is central to why this vehicle ranks where it does. Canada identified that armored casualty evacuation close to the line of contact was a critical gap that was costing Ukrainian lives that better equipment could have saved. Filling that gap with a modern 8x8 platform which can protect medics and patients from small arms and fragment threats was a more effective and arguably more valuable contribution. This was more useful than adding more assault carriers to a battlefield, which were being used up faster than donors could send replacements. As of 2026, the vehicle does not appear in Oryx loss tables in any meaningful way. No widely reported cases of completely destroyed exist anywhere in the documentation record. Analysts and experts have been grouping the L.A.V. along with Rosamax and Strikers as part of the modern Western wheeled cohort. Consistently note that its confirmed loss count is much lower than any platform in the middle of this list. The honest caveats, however, deserve full acknowledgement, not just a footnote. Low Oryx numbers may reflect under-documentation as much as they reflect real survivability. Vehicles operating in medevac and rear area support roles get less OSINT coverage than those on the front lines. These are the vehicles burning with cameras and drones capturing the action. The time lag between arrival in theater and comprehensive documentation adds further uncertainty to any figure you hear. Both of those limitations are genuine and worth respecting. But even after accounting for all of that, the outcome is still notable. A small modern fleet performing high-value casualty evacuation missions with very few confirmed losses represents a clear and meaningful form of battlefield success. This kind of success does not always show up in rankings that focus only on combat footage. Ukrainian commanders who received these vehicles had strong reasons to protect them. They kept them in the medevac role and away from assault missions where armored personnel carriers were being lost in large numbers. That distinction is why they deserve to be considered separately. Number 1. Rosamac from Poland. Simply the best APC in Ukraine. The case for the Rosamac at the top of this list begins with a single number. Just 7 confirmed losses out of a fleet of at least 150 delivered vehicles. 6 destroyed, 1 damaged. While M113's losses cleared 400 and the YPRs hit 122 confirmed gone, the Rosamac came back with a clean 7. In the most intense armored vehicle attrition environment since World War II, that result stands apart from everything else on this entire list. Poland supplied Rosamacs as part of its broader armored aid contribution, an 8x8 wheeled carrier derived from the Finnish Patria AMV family. Some vehicles were baseline versions, while others were upgraded Polish configurations, incorporating protection improvements developed after Poland sustained real losses with the platform in Afghanistan. Lessons from combat turned directly into hardware upgrades, carried forward into the specific vehicles that arrived in Ukraine. That lineage matters when you try to understand where the number 7 comes from. The skeptical hearing is valid and worth engaging seriously rather than dismissing. Low Oryx counts can mean under-documentation as easily as genuine survivability. The Rosamac arrived after the peak documentation period of 2022 and 2023 when every Western vehicle kill generated extensive analysis across multiple OSINT communities. Individual images of destroyed Rosamacs do circulate on social media, and analysts debate variant identification and armor levels in those specific threads. 7 is possibly a partial count. Here is what limits how far that skepticism can reasonably travel. Rosamacs were not kept in reserve. They were not assigned conservative rear area roles the way Canadian L.A.V. were. They went to better equipped Ukrainian formations for offensive operations and high-intensity defensive tasks throughout the war. These vehicles were in the same sectors, facing the same FPV drones and mine belts and precision artillery that destroyed vehicles at every other position on this ranking. Conservative employment explains the L.A.V.6's result. The Rosamac employment was not conservative, which means something different produced the outcome. What the units using Rosamacs appear to have consistently applied is sound armored vehicle tactics. Dismounting infantry before the vehicle enters the most exposed positions, avoiding terrain that bogs down an 8x8 platform, using road speed and mobility to minimize time spent inside kill zones. That tactical discipline, combined with a modern protection package built from real combat experience in a previous war, resulted in a loss record that nothing else on this list comes close to. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video.